Remember when Silver came on last week and he talked about his conversation with Steve Kerr and they likened Trey Lance to James Wiseman. And my mind keeps going back there because it's so hard to have this conversation without people getting very, very upset. And I want to say this is nothing about Trey and James and the word bust and giving up. It's nothing about that.
No.
It's weird. We talked about this a few years ago as such a lucky break. Good teams.
Shout out Guru.
That ended up with high draft picks. You don't see that very often. The Warriors, we know the story. All the injuries, and they get the number 2 pick. The 49ers have a decent pick, but then they turn it into the number 3 pick. And so here you go. Championship contenders with early picks. And we all said the same thing. Wow. You're a championship contender and you get this early pick. And for the young person that gets picked, wow, what a gift. You don't have to be a Jet or a Hornet. You get to go be a Niner or a Warrior. And the more I've watched this, I've decided...
More curse than blessing?
That's not the blessing that you think it is. Because these teams cannot sit here and wait for you to get better. They're like, we got to go.
Right.
And these big guys are like, I'm not ready to go.
And I think the comp is appropriate in these ways. One, both were very, very untested at their collegiate level. Mm-hmm. Trey Lance played at FCS, missed a whole year, and Wiseman played just 3 games and didn't play even a lot in those 3 games. Both highly drafted to winning organizations, like you said, both with more upside than actual tangible skills at this point. The only real difference is the Niners drafted Trey Lance to be their Steph Curry, essentially, quarterback of the football team. Wiseman was drafted to be a big man piece and eventual starting center, but I don't think that they drafted him thinking he was going to end up being a Dwight Howard 24-13 kind of player, Dwight Howard at his peak. He wasn't drafted to be Shaq. I mean, he was a guy who they thought could be a real quality center at this level, and yet neither one of them, for injury reasons. There's another reason why the comparisons are so good. Trey missed a whole year. Well, Wiseman missed a whole year. And so now you're in a spot where Wiseman has a place where he can go and actually play and get better. Trey Lance doesn't. So when Trey Lance gets healthy, and we'll talk to Doc Pandia about this tomorrow, because the notion that Trey Lance might be healthy enough to make a return this year, he debunked it, and he'll tell you why tomorrow at 11:30. It's actually a great explanation that he gave as far as healing versus functional healing and the difference when it comes to pro sports. So Trey Lance next year, Mark, he doesn't have a G League where he can go and play and get better. He gets thrown right into the fire, theoretically.
I mean, March... I've mentioned it a couple times. I'm already waiting for March, and not just Trey.
It's gonna be madness.
Well, and
thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Appreciate it.
Dibber Claus will be here, and Trey Lance rumors will be there, and will James Wiseman still be a Warrior? Like, I mean, there's kind of a race going on right now. James Wiseman, the future. Trey Lance, the future. You sure? If I asked you to bet right now, okay, bet right now, if either one of them, if their future is with their current team, what would you say? I'm going to give you 2 years from now. Are James Wiseman and Trey Lance both still on their current teams?
Boy, that's a great question. Trey Lance, yes. James Wiseman, no.
Okay.
I think, for James Wiseman, I would say, and the trade deadline, I think, is February.
That sounds right.
So that, to me, is an interesting line of, will James Wiseman still be a Warrior? Because we've heard a lot of whispers. There's a lot of talk around the Warriors. And if they need a player in order to make a run down the stretch this year, well, you've got the 15th roster spot as a way to get a player, but maybe you trade one of these youngsters or 2 of these youngsters to get another player to make a championship run. And if you're going to trade anyone right now, the most tradable or the highest probability of a traded player on this Warriors team, it's Wiseman 1.
Sure.
It's Kuminga 2.
Yes.
And then we can have a debate about, I mean, is it, I don't think it's Draymond.
Then it gets crazy. I don't know who it is.
Is it Draymond? Is it
know.
Moody? Is it, I mean, it's not Is it Jordan Poole? I don't know Jordan Poole.
Then there's the rules, obviously.
We know that Steph would be 15th on that list.
Yeah, Steph is last.
Okay.
Yeah, and Poole, there's all the rules because you just signed him to an extension
Wiggins
and whatnot.
also.
Wiggins also. Wiggins, I think, would be next. Like, only Steph would be less likely. I think Wiggins is cemented in there as well. And Poole, quite frankly, I do too. I don't know. A Draymond or a Clay would be for salary reasons. But my gosh, again, going back to the emotions that are involved with these players, here's kind of what almost tends to work against one another. We have such emotions surrounding Klay Thompson, such emotions surrounding Draymond Green. It becomes impossible to start even thinking about doing things that would feel wrong to them. We're like, well, we can't do that. Well, now Draymond has opened the door because he went off and hauled off and punched a teammate in the face. And for a lot of people that went, okay, now it's on the table. You wronged us, now we can go ahead and wrong you. But for Klay, it's off the table, and it couldn't be further off the table because not only is he the nicest guy ever, he's cruising around with a boat, he's a constant champion, and, oh, by the way, any issues he's having are solely because of major injury. And he's worked his way back, and he's done every single thing right. So the idea of doing wrong by Klay Thompson is unfathomable. However, what do the Warriors actually owe to any of these players? The first answer I'd give you is they owe Steph Curry to put everything into what he needs to win as much as he can as his career comes to a close over the next few years. That's what they owe. And if that means getting better help around him, I don't know, you got to look at it, don't you?
Absolutely.
You got to look at it.
But part of that, like what you owe Steph Curry, and I think you're right to the extent that you don't owe these guys anything, but if you want to, do right by any one player, okay, you're not going to ever trade Steph Curry. That, I think, is 100% certainty, at least at this point. So if Steph's going to be here, then you do owe it to him to help him and help your organization be the best it can be. And maybe that includes, hey, Steph, how would you feel if we traded Draymond? You can't trade Draymond. Okay, Steph, we won't do that.
Right.
What if we dealt Klay? You can't trade Klay. Okay, Steph, we won't do that. How much of that is in play to where, not that he's going to sit next to Bob Myers and they're going to have like the final say each other as to what to do, but he certainly is a voice in the room, right?
Oh, you don't do it without asking. You don't do anything without asking. I mean, they didn't go get KD without asking.
So they asked Steph, how would you feel if we sent James Wiseman to Santa Cruz for a little while? And Steph says, does he need a ride?
Right. Like, I could get him to Atherton.
Exactly.
Maybe an Uber from there.
He's on his own from there.
Yeah, Sean and Sam Bruno on Willard and Dibs. Hey, Sean, what are you doing?
Hey, what's going on? Taking my call. I'm just with my 1.5-year-old. We're just doing our thing on, I guess, what is it, Tuesday morning?
If you got a 1.5-year-old, you are not required to know what day it is. Yeah, plus or minus one day. If you had said Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, the answer would be yes.
That's true. It's all the same. But man, I got to talk about this. So I think that it's time to start thinking about the Warriors, the way that the skill, whoever picked up, decided to draft. I think it was a good. I mean, he's a good kid. I love Wiseman as a person and everything. But I'm starting to think he was a misfit as far as what the Warriors need in their big man. And I could see them thinking toward the future, maybe they thought they were going to need a guy that could get some scoring in, a little bit more scoring from that position. But the Warriors, usually with the big man, they need a guy that understands space. They got hands that can screen well, that can pass well. And it just seems like at this point, I know it's been injuries and a lot of these things, but he's got probably the best screening big man as a mentor in the game right now. The best far as his court sense and his spatial awareness. I think nobody's better than Looney in those areas. And it's been 3 years, watching film, and I just seems like he's still in thinking about what to do. And it's I think it might be time to maybe consider that maybe he'll be better fit with another roster.
Sean,
That's a great point, Sean.
I think you're onto something, and we can. Well, I don't want to speak for everybody. I'll speak for me. I can certainly understand if you go back to when they drafted Wiseman. Didn't it feel like, well, gosh, that's the one thing they don't have? Amazing. They ended up with the number 2 pick in the draft, and there happens to be this guy here who's a 7-footer. They don't really have that scoring presence down low.
Skilled 7-footer.
Man, if you pair that with Steph, Clay, and Trey, I mean, we're going to dominate the world.
Light years, Mark.
It made all the sense in the world on paper. And maybe someday it still will. Right? The book's not closed, but I hear a lot of people just starting to use that word fit.
Yeah.
And I agree. Right now, the finer points of Warrior basketball.
He nailed it. That caller absolutely nailed it.
The things that we don't necessarily see. The way that you have to work in your defensive rotations, the way that you have to be a very heady player, the ball movement, it just doesn't feel like it fits.
But just think about the Kevon Looney role. Why is Kevon Looney such a great big man for this team? It's because of his ability to set screens. James Wiseman is not a great screen setter. Kevon Looney's not a great passer. He can pass. Kevon Looney knows when to roll, where to roll, and what to do when he gets the ball in certain spots. James Wiseman is a very skilled big man, but in this system, in this offense, his skills don't really match up, and he doesn't have the ability yet to get his own shot in the half court. So even when they want to run things with James Wiseman, what do we see? We see the high screen, the roll, and then the lob. That's basically the only thing that they run for James Wiseman, and that's not the way this offense generally operates.
Well, and I also think it's tough for fans when players start looking like they're going through something mentally. Do you remember when James first came up? When he first came up and they're like, okay, put him in, because the Warriors were in a spot where everyone was hurt and they could just kind of watch him go. And I remember a few games where you're like, man, this guy, like he's hitting 3-pointers. He's showing all kinds of offensive versatility. He's blocking some shots. Sure, he's raw. He's thin. He's going to fill out. He's going to learn all this and that. That's how it felt in moments. Not all the time, but in moments you looked at James and went, whew, this is a skill set. When you watch him play now, I don't see any of that. It just looks like somebody ran out onto the rectangle and is just out there thinking.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just a whole bunch of thinking. And that does nothing in professional sports.
No, and that's again, to make the Kevon Looney comparison, the way he plays is down to the ground. He doesn't have anything even remotely close to Wiseman's gifts, but he's not thinking out there. He knows where to be. He knows what the team needs him to do. And I think you mentioned it, the word fit. Ultimately, even at James Wiseman's best, he still might not be the right fit for the Warriors. So let's just take that as a possibility. Let's just say that James Wiseman will never fit with what the Warriors do. How do you get James Wiseman comfortable and able to be a piece that another team would say, hey, whoa, he would fit over here? Because right now you haven't showcased him enough. So maybe it's, hey, go to Santa Cruz and get me 28 and 17.
Yep.
Go crazy, folks.
Let a scout go fall in love with you.
Oh, yeah.
Let a scout.
Oh, the length.
Right?
Oh, the jumper.
Scout's going to go to the boardwalk, grab a ring on the carousel, head over to a game, go, oh, my gosh, 28 and 17.
Oh,
call the general manager on a cell phone in the parking lot and go,
but the highlights.
I think he can be something. I think he can do it.
Jesus.
But you're never going to get a scout to think that at Chase Center right now.
You see the way his belt matches his shoes in that second row seat?
Bob, I got a guy. I got a guy. He's at Chase Center right now, and he thinks a lot while he runs around on the court. He doesn't score much and get a lot of rebounds, but man, he can really go out there and look like he's trying to figure it out. You can't do it here. Not right now.
No.
Not yet.